Thanks for joining us. We are back in the Hummingbird Kitchen. We wanted to share some of your favorite recipes with you that are on our current fall and winter menu cycle. We're here with Ryan Gunzenhauser, Backhouse Assistant Director, and Martin Rivera, one of our chefs in the Hummingbird Kitchen today. Ryan's going to be explaining a little bit about the Portobello stuffed with crab cake recipe.
All right, like Sean said, I'm here with Martin today. A lot of you really love our crab cake stuffed portobello mushroom recipe, so I'm going to talk a little bit about what goes into that. If you pan over here, you'll be able to see we use about 60 pounds of crab meat in this recipe. Martin's got that all put into this large container here so that we can mix it all with the rest of our ingredients. You can see in here we've got a mixture of lump and claw meat together. That all comes from our seafood purveyor, Henry's Seafood. They're a local purveyor, so we like to make sure we're using those guys. As you can see here, Martin's got his mise en place measured out for this recipe. For those of you who aren't familiar with that term, it's a French culinary term, basically just used to describe pre-measuring out all the ingredients you need to complete a recipe. We like to do that here. That way, when it comes time to actually put this all together, we've got it all in one spot. And it's ready to go. I get asked about updating recipes a lot. This is an example of our recipe. This is what we work off of for today. If you can see on there, it's got some handwritten instructions. Basically, we take the time to go through our ingredients every day with what we're doing, take a look at the way things are tasting, and we constantly make updates. So these are some updates we made to the recipe for today for when we have this on menu, and then we'll retype this up for next time. So we do that. So if you take a look here, like I said, we've got our crab meat in this container. We make all these by ourselves. There's not a whole lot of filler. So with this 60 pounds of crab meat, we've got about 2.5 quarts of breadcrumbs we're going to mix into that, about 2.5 quarts of liquid eggs, 4 quarts of mayonnaise, we've got about 4 cups of lemon juice, and then we've got Old Bay, mustard, and a few other seasonings we put together to get some nice flavor out of that. So what Martin will do is he'll start adding these ingredients in and get this all mixed up so that we can make our crab cakes. Go. And then as Martin's working on this, a lot of times, moisture content on things varies. So while he's putting this together, this is basically what we think we're going to need to put in here. Depending on the moisture content of the crab meat that we have this week, we may need to add a little bit more liquids to this. We may need to add a little bit more breadcrumbs to get the right consistency. But what you're literally getting is a crab cake that ends up being about 90% or so crab meat. A lot of places you'll go to a restaurant or whatever, you're talking about maybe 40% filler. We're not doing that here. We're trying to give you as much crab meat as we can in that crab cake for a nice solid product. And as you can see, he's got the mayonnaise and the eggs going in there. It takes a while to mix this all together, so he'll put in the lemon juice, kind of get all the liquids in there at one time and mix that around pretty good. Once he's got that about half mixed, he'll get the breadcrumbs going in there, and then he'll spend probably about 15 minutes mixing that together to get a nice even mixture throughout the entire product.
Just so you get an idea of how large this container really is, I'm going to pan down. How many gallon do you think are in there, Ryan? I know that's a huge Lexon we're currently using.
This is, I believe, a 40-gallon container, 30 or 40 gallons. I'm not 100% sure, but it is a huge container. Mm-hmm. So if Martin would lift that up right now, obviously you've got 60 pounds of crab meat. We're doing these really large batches on items that we make here, so a lot of times we'll end up with something huge, and it might take 2 people to be able to lift this off the cart to get it into the walk-in. It's too much for one person to handle, which is why we have it set up on this cart instead of on the prep table, so that we can wheel it over to the walk-in and then only have to lift it a little bit to get it on the shelf. got the last of the ingredients starting to go in. We'll mix in the breadcrumbs a little bit at a time. It's a lot easier to mix when you're not trying to mix in all of that dry product at one time. It would be sort of similar to if you were trying to make cake at home, and when you're blending that together, if you dump all your solids in there at one time, it becomes a little bit more difficult to mix. So when we're working with this huge quantity, a little bit at a time makes it a lot easier to get things together.
So roughly how many portions, Ryan, when this all gets mixed up and they start to pan it up in the hotel pans, roughly how many individual crab cakes will we yield from this recipe approximately?
This will give us approximately 200 crab cakes. We try to do a good job of not smashing it around, so as you can see, Martin's kind of daintily using this spoon to try to not smash the larger pieces of crab up too much. But yeah, we'll get about 200 crab cakes out of this. In the meantime, while he's doing this, we had somebody else take the time to prep up the portobello mushrooms that we're going to put these on for our service. Those portobello mushrooms, we take the time to scoop all the gills out and cut all the stems off. After Martin completes this, then he'll work on the marinade for the portobello mushrooms. They get marinated overnight before we put everything together.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, gentlemen.
Hi everybody, I'm back here with Martin. We're still working on our crab cake stuffed portobello mushroom recipe. Last night we took the time to marinate all of our portobello caps in some balsamic sauce that we make here. As you can see, Martin's showing you, we take all the portobello mushrooms, we'll cut off the stems, take the time to scoop all the gills off the bottom so that we can give you the best product. This is just a portion of those mushrooms. If you look over here to the side, Sean will show you there is an entire another Lexan filled with these guys. Again, we're trying to make about 200 of them. We showed you how we make all the mix for the crab cakes. We took the time, we pre-scooped all those out with 6-ounce portion scoops. You can see we have them all lined up here on our speed rack for today. So what we're going to do is, Martin's going to show you what we're doing here. He's spraying our pan with some non-stick spray, of course, because we can't have these guys sticking to the pans when they come out of the oven. So I'll let him take care of that. After that, he'll use the tongs. We'll grab out the mushroom caps, have those with the bottoms facing up. It makes like a nice little bowl to sit the crab cake into. We try to give them some space on the pan so that they can cook nice and evenly when they go in. So I'll give Martin a few seconds here to go ahead and get those panned up. And again, we talked about this when we were doing the prep yesterday. We're making about 200 of these, so it is a process that goes into it so that we can give you the best product possible. You know, mushrooms are kind of bland, but they're a good source of nutrition, and we like to give them a little added flavor. So we put them in this sauce so that it makes it taste nice for you guys for dinner tonight.
Ryan, where does most of our produce come from?
Produce is coming from two main vendors. We use Kegel's Produce, and we also use Shy Produce. Those are both local vendors. When local products are in season, we will go out of our way to try to purchase local source products from them. So, you know, when it's apple season, Kegel's and Shy Produce will be selling different kinds of apples that are coming from local orchards, and we're trying to purchase those products so that we can give you kind of that taste of Lancaster County that everybody's kind of expecting living here. We also take the time every Tuesday. Sean will take off and go to Rutt's Farmers Market to come up with some fresh fruits that we can source from there. You might see that stuff appearing in your parfaits down in the cafe or in some catering events or things on the line during dinner. So yeah, that's kind of where we get our produce from. So back to what Martin's doing here. He's going to grab each of the crab cakes here. We grab it with a small spatula and scoop. He will load those each up on here. I'm going to let him do that. And it's pretty amazing. Like the finished product from this, you know, you're seeing these great big portobello mushroom caps on here, but of course mushrooms cooked down. which is nice, and it just, all that flavor from that sauce just stays inside that mushroom. It's pretty great. And we have a good seasoning that we use for our crab cakes as well. It's just a good flavor combination. So yeah, he's doing that. That's a nice big one there.
Yeah.
I think I want that one for dinner, Ryan. I'm going to
Yeah.
zoom in on that one
Yeah.
there,
Yeah, it's
closest
like
to Martin.
Looks like a soup bowl. I love it.
Yeah, very nice.
So Martin's finishing those up. We have a couple more steps to go before these guys head to the oven. So he's got those panned up. After that, we're going to add a little bit of seasoning to that. He's got our little seasoning that we make in the bin, so he'll sprinkle that on top of each of these guys and give it a little bit of color, a little bit of extra flavor. Again, we don't add salt to stuff, so you're not going to have salt added into this. This is just pure different seasonings that we blended together. And he's got that. And then we've got panko breadcrumbs over here. He's going to add just a little bit of sprinkle of panko to the top of these mushrooms. That's going to give them a nice sort of brown and crunch when they come out of the oven. It just makes it a lot better texture for when we're eating that for the finished product. So I'll let him finish them up. All right, so Martin's got these all just about ready. We've got some melted margarine blend. We use a butter margarine blend for these to try to keep the fat and calories down for everybody and the sodium. We try not to use full-on butter for things unless we absolutely have to. Some recipes, you got to have butter sometimes when you're baking or if we're cooking things at a higher temperature because the margarine, the oils and stuff separate out of that. It might break what we're working on as far as sauce, but he's going to put these in here. That flavor is going to cook into these crab cake stuffed portobellos here as they cook in the oven. Finish those up. Once he's got all these guys ready to go, we'll just have him put one of these in the oven so we can sort of show you what goes into that. So, might get a little loud here, but we've got our Garland stacked oven. If you watched the tour that Sean did in the kitchen, you already know that we have two sets of these stacked ovens. One set is in Hummingbird Kitchen, the other is over in Bluebird. So Martin's got the oven set to 350. He's gonna get the timer set for about 25 minutes, and he's gonna throw these in there. They take about 20 minutes to cook. We're constantly monitoring temperatures and stuff, so he'll make sure that these are all temped up before they come out. When we get closer to production time, he'll start loading these ovens with a whole bunch of these at one time, and then we'll batch cook these throughout service so we can get the best product possible.
Thanks, guys.
All right, we're back. Our crab cakes have had their 20 minutes or so in the oven, so Martin's going to pull those out right now. So the first thing we do when we get something out of the oven is we need to make sure we're good for food safety. So digital thermometer time. Seafood needs to be 145 degrees, so we're going to check the internal temperature of these crab cakes. We do that with this thermometer, and the temperature gauge is right in the tip, so we're making sure we're getting that in the fattest middle part of what we're temping, because that is where the temperature will be the lowest. So I'll take this, I'll stick it right down here in the crab cakes. It doesn't take too long. These crab cakes are 148 degrees on this one, and we'll always go and check a second one over here. And this one is 147. So, ovens are just like any ovens at home. Sometimes there's a hotter spot than another, so we just make sure that both ends of our trays are temping. And of course, they're going to continue to cook a little bit, so we try to basically pull them out right when they're at their cooking temperature. That way stuff doesn't get overcooked in the oven, and it stays nice and moist by the time we get to service. So now that we know these are temped up, usually what we'll do is we'll get our garnishes ready. Martin's got some parsley here in a bin. He's going to grab that and get that ready for you guys so you can see what he's got. So I'll let him do that real quick. It doesn't take too long. So he'll put parsley on here. Typically then for service time, we would take these crab cakes, we'd repan them into a nice clean pan, put some more garnish on there, get some lemon wedges, and we'd have that out on the service line for everybody when they come through. you know, we're going to be cooking off a huge quantity, and like I said, we batch cook them. So what'll happen is, you know, we're going to make enough to last for the first little bit of service. In the meantime, back here in the kitchen, you would see that we have the oven still going, where we are making more crab cakes back here so that we can make them nice and fresh for you. And you know, for this example, we only made a few, but typically at dinner you would see this pan filled up with the rest of them when we pull them out. And that's our crab cake stuffed portabella recipe.
Looks very nice. Thank you both. Thank you, Martin.
Yep, you're welcome.
Good afternoon. We are here with Frank Portella, sous chef in Woodcrest Villa Dining Department. Today, Frank's going to be sharing with you the recipe. It's our marinated beef tenderloin with balsamic reduction. So Frank is here to start out with this recipe. Where do we get our fresh meats from, Frank?
We get them from Groff Meats.
Okay, very
Right?
nice.
And they all come Pyrovac. And we're going to use 2 separate knives. We're going to use 2 separate knives to deal with this. I'm going to use one knife to open it up, and I'm going to discard it and use another knife to actually do the fillets and to break down the meat.
Okay, sounds
Okay.
good. And we do get the prime cuts from Groff Meats.
Correct.
It's actually the Western tenderloin.
Correct.
All right.
All right. And here we go.
So Frank's been a chef for how many years, Frank?
A chef? I've been a chef for, I'm going to say, at least 10 years. I've been cooking since I'm 8 years old.
Okay, all right. So we're going to do the math and say a
yeah,
long time.
So I'm old. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we separate the main piece from the train. And this the chain. And the chain's over here. And you can easily take it off just by putting your fingers through it. Just like that. You don't even have to use the knife to do it. You cut right along here.
We're getting a little demonstration in Butchering
Correct.
101.
Butchering 101. Now, what a lot of people don't know is some people just like get rid of this, but you really shouldn't, because there's a lot of good meat in here. So what I'm going to do later on today is I'm actually going to take all the silver skin off and break it down. We can use it as for beef tips. We can use it for, you know, put it in stock. We can use it for a lot of, you know, ground beef meat. A lot of different things we can use it for. So I'll put that on the side.
Very good.
Now, meat's good for you, and so is the fat. But this fat that I'm going to take off is called the silver skin. This you cannot consume. It's not good for you. You can't even chew on it. It's like chewing on a piece of leather. So I'm going to remove it. And the way to remove this is you have to go right underneath the skin itself with the knife, and I'm going to angle the knife upward and pull across. This is so tough, this sharp knife can't even cut through it unless I go upward and dig into it.
Nice. And again, just so everybody knows, this is a beef tenderloin, aka filet mignon.
Yeah, this is one of the most expensive and most tender piece of meat on the beef. This is meat you can cook it medium rare, well done, doesn't make a difference, it'll come out perfect the way you like it.
Looks like you definitely have some butchering skills.
Right there. And this is the last piece right here.
All right.
I'm going to separate. And you got to do this with a sharp knife. If you do it with a dull knife, you're going to wind up cutting yourself.
Definitely.
All right. That being done, over here you have, this is called the tail. This is like the butt end. And you can always remove the butt end right over here. And we do the same thing with this piece of meat that we can do with the other stuff. We make the cubes, we can make stir fry with it, or anything we want. And I'll keep it here and I'll deal with that later. And take a little tail end, little piece off, and it's ready to go. Sometimes there's more fat on here and I'll take it a little bit off, but you really shouldn't. And now it's ready just to get marinated overnight if I want to, or if I want to put a dry rub on it, or if I want to, I can actually use some of this, which is like the Montrose steak seasoning. You put that on top of it and roast it in the oven whole. Or if you want, when you're home, you can just make fillets with it if you want.
Very nice.
There you go.
Thank you, Frank.
You're
We are
welcome.
back here in the Hummingbird Kitchen with Frank Portella, culinary manager.
All right. So we had the beef tenderloin broken down. They're ready to go. We had it marinated overnight in balsamic dressing. So now we're gonna get this and we're gonna cook it at a temperature about 100. I want to say it's gonna put about 120 degrees. It's gonna come up high when we pull it out. The temperature's gonna keep rising. So if I take it out about 140 or something like that, then it's gonna be a well done piece of meat by the time you guys get served. So we'll pull this out. And I'm not going to get all this marinade and put it in here because if I do that, it's not going to roast. It's going to wind up steaming. You don't want it to steam on you.
So Frank, how long was that marinating in the refrigerator again?
You had it marinating overnight. So I'm going to say anywhere, you can marinate this anywhere between 12 to 24 hours.
Okay,
All right?
very good.
It's going in the oven at 350 degrees. I'm putting it on a high fan. It should be ready in about 25 minutes to a half hour. And then when we come back, we'll show you how we cut it down and present it.
Very good. Thank you, Frank.
You're welcome. So the tenderloin is done. Now we'll temp it to make sure it's at the temperature it's supposed to be at.
All right.
Give it a few seconds, make sure the arm goes up, and it's actually perfect.
How many pounds for that recipe typically are you doing when we're feeding the hummingbird and bluebird in for the main meal of the day, Frank?
It's basically around 100 pounds, both kitchens.
100 pounds, wow.
All right. So usually we have this rest for about 20 minutes, but for the demo purposes, I'm just going to cut it now.
All right, sounds good.
And that's how it's supposed to look, just like that.
Looks like a nice medium piece
Uh-huh.
of tenderloin. Very
There we
nice.
go.
And for this recipe, this was being served for Valentine's Day along with the shrimp scampi.
And then actually after we're done with the slicing, we would put the demi-glaze over it. And this
Alright.
is a balsamic glaze that will go over it. And we
Okay.
just kind of drizzle it, just like this. And that's all. You don't use a lot of it. It's going to be too overwhelming for the meat.
Sure.
And that's about it.
Very nice, Frank. Thank you for sharing that recipe with us.
Now, you're very welcome, sir.